In the Gospel of John, chapter 7, we find an interesting dialogue between Jesus Christ and his brothers, and we'll use the term in a physical sense because that's what they're referring to. In other words, family, not brothers like in brothers in Christ or sisters in Christ, but brothers genetically, brothers in the same bloodline. And of course, this is always a debated topic because certain branches of Christianity do not believe that Mary had other children other than Jesus. And she may have and may not have, but obviously there was half-brothers or step-brothers or whatever it was. They were part of the family. And they encounter Jesus here in chapter 7 in a little dialogue that we rarely hear taught or preached, but it's very interesting. Starts out like this in verse 1. And after these things, Jesus was walking to Galilee, for he was unwilling to walk in Judea because the Jews were seeking to kill him. And now the feast of the Jews, the feast of booths, was at hand. His brothers therefore said to him, Depart from here, and go into Judea, that your disciples also may behold your works which you are doing. For no one does anything in secret when he himself seeks to be known publicly. If you are doing these things, show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers were believing in him. And Jesus therefore said to them, My time is not yet at hand, but your time is always opportune. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it, and its deeds are evil. Go up to the feast yourselves. I do not go up to the feast because my time has not yet fully come. And having said these things to them, he stayed in Galilee. It's interesting because we see this kind of a contrast. His own family doesn't really believe who he is, save Mary, and she's not in this dialogue. Quite sure Mary understood, at least to some measure, that Jesus was a miraculous birth and that in all of this God was doing a great work, and probably even more so into his messiahship. But his brothers were kind of like, yeah, whatever. And they're talking to him and they say, hey, if you're really this hot, if you're really this good, go where the action is and show your stuff. Because if you don't, you won't be known publicly. This is what is so unique about Jesus. He's not in it for that. He is not in it to get public recognition, to be glorified by people. And he talks about it through the Gospels of how his glory comes from his Father, who is God. Now, what we have to understand is, he told them, he says, you know what? The world doesn't hate you because you fit in it. And that's what he's basically saying to his brothers. What's ironical about it is one of his brothers will end up being one of the first rulers or overseers over the church in Jerusalem, James the Just. And here is where we see them before that time. They're doubting. You know, your own family generally knows you better than anybody, and you got to really work hard to prove yourself to them if you ever do. Jesus lived a faultless, sinless life, so they were really kind of thinking, what's wrong with this guy? You know? And so they're trying to get him to go out in the public and prove who he is, strut his stuff, as we would say. Jesus says, no, my time is not yet come. The world doesn't hate you. You get along good with it, but they hate me because I call it like it is. He says, I testify of it. I testify of the world. Jesus came to show them their sin, and then, not just to point it out, not to condemn them in it, but to save them from it. And ever clearly do we see this in John chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. And he makes it very clear that, you know, the world is sinful, but I didn't come to condemn it. He says, I came to redeem it. I came that they might be saved from their sin, that they might have salvation. That's what he came for. And he says, you know what? They don't like what I say because their deeds are evil and they know it. They really do. He says, you go on to the feast yourselves. You go do what you need to do. No problem. I'm going to stay right here in Galilee. Why did he stay in Galilee? That's the question we have to ask. Well, first of all, he was not afraid of those who would kill him. We have to rule that out. He was working on God's specific time. And as he said earlier in the dialogue, my time hasn't come yet. It's not fully here. It's coming. But what was his time? Well, that was his week of passion, his death, burial, and resurrection. And he knew that was coming, and he knew it wasn't coming right now. So he stayed in Galilee and ministered to people there. It shows you that when you're walking with God and you understand what's going on, you'll get a better grasp of his timing in your life. You'll be more patient. Jesus could have went up and said, okay, I'll show you my stuff. I'll prove who I am. But he didn't. He understood the timing. We don't always understand the timing as accurately as Jesus does, but we can be patient and understand that God has a plan for our lives, and in the proper time, the plan will be revealed.